What if a delayed flight changed the course of your life? What if one unexpected night with a stranger became the beginning of true love? And what if destiny found you, far from home? Welcome back to the channel. If you love emotional stories filled with romance, chance encounters, and Nigerian elegance, make sure you like this video, subscribe for more beautiful stories, and turn on your notifications so you never miss an upload. And before we begin, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Now let's dive into today's story. The first sign that everything was about to change came in the form of a blinking red notice board. Flight cancelled. Bola Akinyemi stared at the words longer than necessary, as if his will alone could force them to rearrange themselves. He had built companies from dust, bent markets to his vision, flown in and out of countries at will. But here in Dubai, days before Christmas, he was powerless. Around him, voices rose in frustration. Phones were lifted. Tempers flared. Bola had just the cuff of his tailored shirt, his mind already calculating alternatives. A private jet would be easy, but the storm-grounding commercial flights had spread wider than expected. Even money, it seemed, had limits tonight. That was when he noticed her. She wasn't arguing. She wasn't pacing. She stood calmly a few steps away, a small carry-on by her side, listening as the airline agent spoke. There was something striking about her stillness in the chaos. Her creamy skin caught the light softly, and her presence felt grounded, as if she knew how to wait without losing herself. When she turned slightly, their eyes met. The moment was brief but unsettling. Bola looked away first. At the counter, the airline agent sighed, clearly exhausted. "We sincerely apologize," she said. "Due to hotel shortages, we can only provide one room for passengers traveling to Lagos tonight." Bola frowned. "One room?" "Yes, sir." Before he could object, the woman beside him spoke gently. "It's okay," she said. "We'll manage." Her voice was calm, warm. Bola turned to her again. "Imbola," he said, extending his hand. "Chioma." Her handshake was firm but relaxed. Real. At the hotel later that night, the room felt too small for two strangers. One bed, one lamp, one shared silence. "I'll take the couch," Bola said immediately, dropping his jacket over the armrest. Chioma hesitated. "You don't have to. I insist." She studied him for a second, then nodded. "Thank you." The lights dimmed. The city hummed outside. Bola lay on the couch, eyes open, thoughts loud. He hadn't shared a space like this with a stranger in years, maybe ever. And yet, there was no discomfort, only awareness. Once he glanced toward the bed. Chioma slept peacefully, her face relaxed, unguarded. The sight stirred something unexpected in him. Not desire, but admiration, respect, a quiet curiosity about who she was beneath the calm. He turned away, heart unsettled. Morning came softly. On the shuttle back to the airport, Chioma smiled at him. "Looks like we survived," she said. Bola smiled back, something warm spreading through his chest. He didn't know it yet, but the delay he had cursed all night had already begun to rewrite his story. And this was only the beginning. The aircraft hummed steadily as it climbed, cutting through layers of cloud that looked soft enough to touch. Bola sat by the window, watching Dubai shrink beneath them, a strange heaviness settling in his chest. He told himself it was exhaustion, lack of sleep, stress. But when Chioma took the seat beside him, that explanation no longer felt honest. "Window seat," she said lightly. "Lucky you." He smiled. "You can have it if you want." She shook her head. "I like the aisle. Makes me feel closer to the ground even when we're flying." Something about that stayed with him. For a while, they sat in companionable silence, the kind that didn't demand filling. Then turbulence jolted the plane slightly, and Chioma's fingers tightened around the armrest. Bola noticed immediately. "You okay?" he asked, lowering his voice. She nodded, then laughed softly. "I pretend I'm not scared of flying, but my body always betrays me." He smiled. "You hide it well." That was how the conversation began. Not grand, not planned, just honest. They spoke about work first. Bola kept his answers vague. downplaying the scale of his success. Chioma talked about her career with pride but no arrogance. Her words thoughtful, measured. She spoke of Lagos with fond frustration, of traffic and noise and how, somehow, it still felt like home. Then the conversation deepened. She talked about expectations, how people assumed things about her before she even spoke. Bola understood that too well. He spoke carefully at first about loneliness at the top, about how people often loved the idea of him more than the man himself. Chioma listened, really listened. At one point, she turned fully toward him. "You don't talk like someone who's used to being heard," she said gently. The words struck him harder than he expected. As the cabin lights dimmed, the world outside faded into darkness, but something between them brightened. Laughter came easier. Silences felt intimate, not awkward. Bola found himself memorizing small details. The way Chioma tucked her hair behind her ear when thinking, the slight crease between her brows when she was being serious. When the captain announced their descent into Lagos, Bola felt a flicker of panic. This was supposed to end here. As the plane touched down, applause rippled through the cabin. Chioma exhaled in relief, smiling to herself. Bola watched her, knowing something had shifted irreversibly. At the baggage claim, surrounded by noise and movement, he hesitated, something he rarely did. "Chioma," he said finally, "I know this started by chance, but I don't want it to end that way." She met his gaze, eyes steady, curious, open. "Neither do I," she said. Outside, the warm Lagos air wrapped around them, familiar and electric. Christmas decorations glowed faintly in the distance. And as they exchanged numbers, hands brushing briefly, Bola understood one undeniable truth. Some journeys don't end when the plane lands. Sometimes that's when they truly begin. Lagos welcomed Bola back with its familiar chaos. Honking cars, shouting vendors, the heavy warmth of December air mixed with dust and anticipation. Christmas was close. The city felt alive in a different way, brighter, louder, impatient for celebration. Yet for the first time in a long while, Bola barely noticed any of it. Chioma. Her name lingered in his mind through board meetings, phone calls, and late-night strategy sessions. He would pause mid-sentence, distracted by the memory of her laugh on the plane, the sincerity in her eyes when she spoke about life. It unsettled him. How easily she had entered his thoughts, how quietly she had taken space there. 3 days passed. On the fourth evening, as Christmas lights flickered on across his living room, Bola stood by the tall windows of his home and admitted the truth to himself. He missed her. The house was stunning, modern Nigerian design at its finest. Warm neutral walls, handcrafted wooden panels, soft leather furniture, carefully curated African art. A towering Christmas tree stood proudly near the staircase, decorated in gold, red, and white. The room smelled faintly of pine, cinnamon, and home, yet it felt empty. He picked up his phone. "Hi Chioma, I hope your day went well. Would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow evening?" The pause after sending the message felt longer than any business negotiation had ever faced. Then her reply came. "I'd like that. Thank you for asking." Bola exhaled, a slow smile spreading across his face. The next evening, Chioma arrived just after sunset. She stood at the doorway for a moment, taking in the space. The warm lighting, the Christmas glow, the quiet elegance. "This place feels intentional," she said softly. Bola nodded. "I wanted it to feel like somewhere you can breathe." Dinner was unhurried. They talked about small things. Music, favorite Christmas foods, memories of childhood holidays. But beneath it all was something deeper, unspoken, building steadily. Every laugh felt closer. Every glance lasted a second longer than necessary. When the plates were cleared, music played softly in the background. They stood near the Christmas tree, its lights casting gentle reflections across Chioma's face. Bola turned to her, suddenly unsure, vulnerable. "I'm not very good at this," he admitted. "Letting someone see me outside work." Chioma met his gaze. "You're doing just fine." Silence fell, not awkward but full. Slowly, carefully, Bola reached for her hand. giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Instead, her fingers curled around his, warm and steady. When he leaned in, the kiss was soft, tentative, filled with curiosity, hope, and restraint. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't dramatic. But it changed everything. When they pulled apart, Chioma rested her forehead briefly against his. Sometimes, she whispered, the right things happen quietly. Bola closed his eyes, knowing she was right. Outside, Lagos buzzed with Christmas excitement. Inside, beneath glowing lights and gentle music, two hearts settled into something new, something honest. And Bola understood then, this wasn't chance anymore. It was choice. The quiet after Chioma left lingered long after the door closed. Bola stood in the living room, Christmas lights still blinking softly, music playing to an audience of none. The kiss replayed in his mind, not just the touch of her lips, but the way it had made him feel exposed and steady at the same time. He had closed Billionaire deals with less impact than that single moment beneath the tree. That night, sleep came slowly. He lay awake thinking of her words, her calm certainty, the way she had looked at him as if she saw more than headlines and status. For the first time in years, Bola didn't feel the urge to fill the silence with work. He welcomed it, felt like space being made for something new. The next morning, Lagos woke loud and unapologetic. December traffic snarled outside his gates, generators hummed in the distance, and somewhere a radio played Christmas High Life. Bola sat at the edge of his bed, phone in hand, debating whether to text first. He did. Good morning, Chioma. I hope you slept well. The reply came minutes later. I did. I was still smiling when I woke up. He smiled too, surprised at how easily it happened. Days passed, and something gentle but persistent grew between them. They spoke every day, sometimes about nothing, sometimes about everything. Bola found himself opening up in ways he never had. He talked about the pressure of leadership, the loneliness of being needed but rarely known. Chioma shared her fears, her hopes, the quiet strength it took to remain soft in a demanding world. There was no rush, just intention. On Christmas Eve, Chioma visited again. The house glowed brighter now, candles lit, the tree fuller with wrapped gifts beneath it. Outside, the Harmattan air carried laughter from neighboring homes. They cooked together, bumping into each other in the kitchen, laughing at small mistakes. At some point, Chioma paused, watching Bola move around his space with ease. You're different here, she said. At home. He met her gaze. So are you. You bring calm with you. That night, they sat on the couch, close but not touching, listening to music and the distant sounds of celebration. The silence between them felt like trust. When Bola finally reached for her hand again, there was no hesitation this time. Their fingers intertwined naturally, as if they had always known where they belonged. I don't want to scare this away, he said quietly. Chioma squeezed his hand. Then let's walk slowly. Outside, fireworks cracked the sky as Christmas arrived. Inside, two people chose patience over fear, honesty over pretense, and connection over control. And Bola understood something deeper than romance. Love didn't ask him to be less of who he was. It asked him to be real. As the Christmas lights flickered and the city celebrated, a new chapter began. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, warm, and full of promise. Christmas Day arrived gently, like it didn't want to disturb what was already growing. Sunlight filtered through sheer curtains, casting soft patterns across Bola's living room. The Christmas tree still glowed from the night before, lights dimmed but faithful, as if standing guard over something sacred. Outside, Lagos buzzed, church bells in the distance, laughter, the smell of rice and meat drifting through the neighborhood. Bola woke with a strange calm in his chest. Not excitement, not anxiety, peace. His phone buzzed. Merry Christmas, Bola. I hope today is kind to you. He stared at the message longer than necessary, then replied. Merry Christmas, Chioma. Thank you for existing. He surprised himself with that last line. But it was true. Later that afternoon, Chioma arrived dressed simply, beautifully, effortless in a way that made Bola realize how much he valued authenticity over display. When she stepped inside, the warmth between them felt familiar now, like something that had always been waiting. They exchanged small gifts, thoughtful ones. Chioma gave him a leather-bound journal. "For your thoughts," she said, "not the ones meant for meetings." Bola gave her a delicate necklace, understated but elegant. "It reminded me of you," he said. Quiet strength. She didn't speak. She just hugged him. They ate together, laughed, argued playfully about whose childhood Christmas was better, and shared stories that peeled back layers neither had rushed to show before. There were pauses, moments where they simply looked at each other, understanding without words. In the late afternoon, Harmattan breeze drifted in through the windows. They sat side by side on the couch, shoulders touching lightly. "Can I ask you something?" Chioma said. "Anything." "What happens after this?" she asked gently. "After the holidays, after the magic." Bola turned to her fully. "I don't want magic," he said honestly. "I want consistency. I want effort. I want you." In real life, her eyes softened, not surprised but moved. "I'm not interested in being an escape," she said. "I want to build something that can survive ordinary days." He nodded. "Then let's choose each other on those days." That evening, as the sky darkened and Christmas lights across Lagos flickered alive, Bola walked Chioma to her car. They stood there for a moment, reluctant. Their kiss this time was deeper. Not desperate, not rushed, but certain. A kiss that spoke of intention, of choosing again and again. When she drove away, Bola didn't feel empty. He felt anchored. Inside, he opened the journal she had given him and wrote his first entry. "I met her by accident. I kept her by choice. And for the first time, I'm not afraid of what comes next." Outside, Christmas music drifted through the night. Inside Bola's home and heart, something lasting had begun. January arrived without ceremony. The decorations came down slowly, one ornament at a time, but the warmth Chioma had brought into Bola's life remained. Lagos returned to its usual rhythm. Early meetings, traffic-heavy mornings, long days that demanded decisiveness and strength. Yet something about Bola had shifted. He noticed it in small ways. He listened more. He rushed less. He no longer felt the need to fill every silence. Chioma fit into his days naturally, without force. Some evenings they met for dinner. Other days they simply talked on the phone while each went about their lives. There was no pressure to perform, no expectations wrapped in glitter, just presence. One evening, Chioma came over after a particularly long day for Bola. He was quieter than usual, shoulders heavy with the weight of decisions that affected hundreds of lives. She noticed immediately. "You don't have to carry everything alone," she said softly, placing a cup of tea in front of him. He sighed, the sound deep and tired. "I'm used to it." She sat beside him, not too close, not distant, just enough. "You don't have to be used to it with me." The words settled into him slowly, dismantling walls he hadn't realized were still standing. That night he spoke freely, about fear, about failure, about the loneliness that came with being admired from afar but rarely known up close. Chioma didn't interrupt. She didn't try to fix him. She simply stayed. And that was enough. Weeks passed. Their bond deepened, not in grand gestures but in routines. Morning texts, shared meals, long walks through quiet neighborhoods, laughter that came easily, disagreements handled gently, honestly. One afternoon, while driving through the city, Chioma asked a question that had clearly been waiting. "Bola," she said, eyes fixed on the road, "what does commitment look like to you?" He didn't answer immediately. Then, "Consistency," he said. "Showing up. Choosing the same person even when it's inconvenient." She nodded slowly. "That's what I want too." He reached for her hand at the traffic light. She squeezed back. In that simple exchange, something solidified. Later that night, alone in his home, Bola stood by the window watching the city lights flicker. For the first time, the future didn't feel like a strategy to be mastered. It felt like a path to be walked with someone beside him. He smiled quietly. Love, he realized, wasn't loud. It was steady. And in that steadiness, Bola had finally found what success alone had never given him: connection that didn't demand performance, only truth. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't walking alone anymore. The first real test didn't come with drama. It came quietly on a Tuesday morning. Bola was already in his office before sunrise, the city barely awake, when the news broke. A major investor had pulled out unexpectedly, citing strategic realignment. The language was polite, but the implications were sharp. Meetings were called. Phones rang nonstop. Pressure tightened around him like a familiar suit he had worn too many times before. By noon, the old Bola had returned, the controlled, guarded man who handled storms alone. And Chioma felt it. His replies became shorter. Calls were postponed. When they finally spoke that evening, his voice was distant, distracted. "I'm fine," he said when she asked. "Just busy." She didn't argue, but she heard what he wasn't saying. 2 days passed like that. On the third evening, Chioma showed up at his house unannounced. Bola was surprised to see her standing there, arms folded loosely, eyes calm but searching. "You didn't ask me to come," she said gently. "But you also didn't say not to." He stepped aside silently, letting her in. The house felt different. Too quiet, too cold, despite the warm lights. Papers were scattered across the dining table. His jacket lay where he had dropped it, evidence of a man retreating inward. "You're shutting me out," Chioma said softly, not accusing, observing. Bola rubbed his face, exhaustion breaking through his composure. "I don't know how to do this part," he admitted. "When things get hard, I disappear." She nodded. "I noticed." Silence stretched between them, heavy but honest. "I don't need you to be perfect," she continued. "I just need you to be present, even when you're unsure. Especially then." The words cut deep, not because they hurt, but because they were true. Bola sat down slowly, the weight of years pressing into that single moment. "I've built my life on control," he said. "Letting someone see me when I don't have answers feels like failure." Chioma sat across from him. "It's not failure, it's trust." He looked at her then, not as a man in charge, but as a man standing at a crossroads. "I don't want to lose you," he said quietly. "You want," she replied. "But you have to let me stay." That night, they didn't fix everything. They didn't make grand promises or dramatic declarations. They talked. They listened. They chose honesty over habit. And when Chioma finally left, Bola felt something unfamiliar but powerful settle in his chest. Not relief, not certainty, but growth. He understood now that love wasn't proven when things were easy. It was proven when reality knocked, and you opened the door together. Just when Bola and Chioma thought life had found its rhythm. An unexpected twist is about to test their bond like never before. Will their love survive the pressures of family, business, and secrets long buried? Or will the choices they make tear them apart before they can truly be together? You don't want to miss what happens next. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you're the first to see the next chapter. And we want to hear from you. Comment below where you're watching from and tell us, do you think their love can survive the storm?